welcome to the World Today on Channels Television. I am Amarachi Obani. We'll begin today's program in Europe. Workers in Turkey are angry over the country's recent mine disaster in which 282 people have been killed. Several unions are today participating in a 24-hour strike, blaming the privatization of the mining sector for making working conditions more dangerous for the people. Following announcements of 3 days of mourning, President Abdullah Gül has visited the scene of the disaster, but anger is fast rising against the government in several cities around the country.
And the anger is not hidden, as it is directed at the government. Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan got a taste of it when he visited Soma on Wednesday. Angry protesters booed him as he made his way to the mine. They kicked his car, calling for his resignation. He was forced to seek refuge in a shop at one stage. The town's ruling AK party offices were also attacked. However, Mr. Erdogan's aide Yusuf Yıkıl made headlines when photos emerged of him appearing to kick a protester in Soma. Protests have been held in major cities across the country, but the government would not tolerate any unrest. The police fired water cannons to break up demonstrations in Izmir, the nearest large city to Soma, which has been the scene of the country's worst industrial disaster. An announcement of 3 days of mourning has done nothing to curb people's anger at the government. Unions are furious over what they say are poor safety standards since the formerly state-run mine in Soma, southwest of Istanbul, was leased to a private firm. They blame the government's coziness with mining tycoons, its failure to ensure safety, and a lack of information on the rescue effort. 8 bodies were recovered overnight, bringing the death toll to 282, but 150 miners are still missing. Earlier, families and communities held burials for the dead and sat by the graves in respect and grief. They later held prayers for their loved ones. The government has been accused of rejecting a recent proposal for a parliamentary inquiry into mine accidents in the area, although officials say the Soma mine was subject to regular inspections, most recently in March.
Well, over in the United States, U.S. President Barack Obama has been in New York joining survivors and rescuers of the 9/11 attack in the dedication of a memorial museum. He and First Lady Michelle toured the museum, viewing a memorial wall with photos of victims and a mangled fire truck before the ceremony began. He was joined by New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, former President Bill Clinton, and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Mr. Bloomberg said the museum was a reminder to the U.S. that freedom carries heavy responsibilities. The museum, not far from the original site of the World Trade Center, is mostly underground. It features dramatic, horrific moments of the day in videos, including the 2 skyscrapers collapsing, but it also has symbols of heroism, such as damaged fire trucks and the wristwatch of one of the passengers who confronted the hijackers. However, a car bomb has exploded near the Syrian-Turkey border, killing at least 29 people. A video posted online appeared to show smoke rising from burning vehicles, charred corpses, and scattered luggage remains of the blast. A local activist said he had seen at least 12 ambulances transporting dozens of wounded people across the border to hospitals in Turkey. The Syrian side of the crossing has been under the control of Islamist rebels who have been fighting the jihadist Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant since early January. Officials in Thailand have reported the death of 3 people following a raid on a camp of anti-government protesters in the capital, Bangkok. Protesters have been pushing for replacement of the cabinet after a court found Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra guilty of negligence of a state rice buying scheme. Under the subsidy scheme, the state paid farmers way above market prices for their rice. While the protesters were pleased with the verdict and ouster, they've called for replacement of the cabinet with an appointed administration. Much earlier today, anti-government protesters forced a meeting between the government and the Election Commission to be abandoned. Reports say grenades were thrown, followed by gunfire. Protests against the government have been quite frequent in Thailand since they began last year.
M16 อีกจำนวนหนึ่งนะคะศูนย์เอราวัณสำนักการแพทย์กรุงเทพมหานครเปิดเผยผ่านทางเว็บไซต์ว่า
We'll take a break now on the world. So when we come back, our focus on the immigration problem that the EU is currently struggling with. Please join us again.
If you want to know what's trending or you miss your favorite live shows, you can watch it all on our YouTube channel. Simply log on to www.youtube.com/channelsweb, scroll down to your favorite program and click play. You can also view all uploaded videos by clicking on View All. Don't forget to subscribe and get the latest videos. If they are interesting, like them and be heard. Get connected with the channel's television YouTube page. The news at your fingertips.
Welcome back. A woman in South Sudan is being punished for her choice of worship. A court in the country has sentenced, it is in Sudan, a court in the country sentenced Miriam Ishak to death by hanging for what he said was apostasy after she left Islam and married a Christian man. However, local media say she would not serve a sentence for another 2 years after she has given birth. She was convicted of adultery on the grounds that her marriage to a Christian man from South Sudan was void under Sudan's version of Islamic law, which says Muslim women cannot marry non-Muslims. And for that, the judge sentenced her to 100 lashes, saying she committed adultery. Rights group Amnesty International has condemned the sentence as appalling and abhorrent. They claim Miriam was raised as an Orthodox Christian, her mother's religion, because her father, a Muslim, was reportedly absent during her childhood. And to our focus today, the EU's border agency Frontex has released a new study showing that the number of people trying to get into the EU illegally has increased. It says a total of 107,000 detections were registered by Frontex, compared with 72,500 in 2012. While the figure rose by 48%, it's still much lower than in 2011, when as many as 141,000 people tried to get in.
The report is indeed worrisome for the European Union. But as violence and unrest increase, especially in Africa and the Middle East, there are fears a lot more people would cause more problems for the EU. However, some EU countries have become a major destination for these immigrants. One of them is Italy, where the number of immigrants has grown steadily over the years, especially between 2003 and 2013. As at last year, more than 4 million immigrants landed in the country, mostly by boat. Rescue of illegal immigrants over its coasts has become a duty. The most recent happened on Monday when Italian naval and coast guard vessels recovered 17 bodies and rescued over 200 people after a migrant boat sank in the sea between Libya and southern Sicily. And that was just a day after dozens were drowned in a similar incident. Earlier this month, Italian Navy vessels rescued over 4,300 people in a week from boats off Sicily. Navy helicopters helped sighting several vessels, many struggling to keep their packed boats afloat. Rescued migrants included pregnant women, children, and a newborn child. Despite the risks involved going by sea, many times in open boats, with limited food and water, which is exhausted before arriving at their destination, the immigrants have continued to take the plunge. While over 25,000 migrants have reached Italy in the first few months of this year, with the collapse of order in large parts of Libya, leaving authorities struggling to combat the groups that control the illegal migrant traffic. Germany, on the other hand, has had a problem with the number of Romanians and Bulgarians moving to the country. It says the numbers have doubled, and the government expects that the immigrants will now be free to work anywhere in the European Union, as Germany will defend its welfare system from potential abuse. Economic growth and low unemployment in Germany are luring EU citizens, taking advantage of free labor movement in the bloc, and industry is short of workers. Economic growth and low unemployment in Germany are luring EU citizens, and they're taking advantage of free labor movement in the bloc, and industry is short of workers. Immigration hotspots such as Frankfurt, Munich, Hamburg, and Hanover are already overwhelmed by unemployed East Europeans needing healthcare, schools, and welfare. In March, the German Interior Minister warned that the number of immigrants from Bulgaria and Romania and the social problems linked to some of them could be managed nationally, but in certain regions it is alarming, and the rise in numbers is also scary. Germany had its highest net migration in 2 decades in 2013, when 16 city mayors pleaded for help coping with poor immigrants from Eastern Europe, and many of them were Roma. Over in Spain, over 1,074 people breached the 12-kilometer-long fences in the whole of 2013, and more than 1,600 have done so since the beginning of this year. Morocco, from where most of its African migrants come from, has begun secretly working to boost border security at Spanish enclaves in North Africa, prompting anger from human rights campaigners. Reports suggest the wall will be 5 yards in height and topped with blades to discourage ascent by would-be migrants attempting to cross into the Spanish territory. There are also plans to include a trench containing razor wire at the foot of the wall. The EU parliamentary elections hold this month, and the emergency created by the rising number of immigrants to some EU countries will top the agenda for discussion.
Well, those figures are certainly worrisome, and the EU does have its work cut out for it when it discusses later this month on immigration policies amongst countries. But joining me now via telephone from Abuja is Professor Nsongura Ndombane. He's an international lawyer. Professor, thank you for joining us on The World today. We know you have a busy schedule with the national conference holding in Abuja, but thank you for taking out some time out of your busy schedule to join us. Let's look at those figures again, Professor. They're rising. Countries are beginning to complain. Italy has been receiving much or the bulk of these illegal immigrants. Why are these figures going higher with each passing year?
Well, there are multiple reasons for the increasing number of immigrants. One of it could be obviously the result of civil conflicts, which are growing increasingly in a number of countries. Syria has been in a civil war, a state of civil war for the past 2 years. There's currently civil war in South Sudan as we speak. Libya has been in a state of crisis for some years now, and a number of other African countries as well, including